This is going to be a flashback. Let's see how good your memory is. These are Nancy's parents. Who's the other guy?
That guy is familiar, but I'm not locating the name.
Okay. Well, two of them, that's Nancy's beautiful mother, Nancy's beautiful father. And that third person is very solicitous, always looking to raise money. We both knew him. And one of your, did you figure it out yet?
I recognize the face. I just can't, the name is not coming to me.
That's Ken Starr.
Oh, really?
That was Ken Starr. He went there.
That Ken Starr. No, not the Ken Starr of Clinton fame. The Ken Starr that I helped ruin. Ken Starr, who's partially in prison thanks to my cross-examination of him. Yes, I should have seen that face. That face of infamy.
I didn't know you cross-examined him.
Oh yeah. That's the Ken Starr from the Wesley Snipes case.
Yeah.
So in fact, Ken Starr was supposed to be the government's key witness. Actually, it was supposed to be his son and some other people, but we employed some trial techniques that disabled their ability to do that. And so instead, they decided to make Ken Starr the day of. In fact, leading in, the way the Snipes case was, it was just insane top to bottom. I only got the witnesses the night before. I only got their prior testimony the night before. So I had to prepare for their cross-examinations the night before, get like 2 hours of sleep, if that. And the advantage was I could use lunch to prepare for the people that were supposed to come up in the afternoon. Well, that morning, Bobby O'Neill, the prosecutor, figured out that we had already had effective cross-examination material on Ken Starr's son, and a key person who worked with Ken Starr. So he flipped the script and put Ken Starr up first. And I hadn't prepared for him yet because he was supposed to be after lunch. So I had to prepare right there on the spot. Now, I had prepared in general for him. We had been planning information about Ken Starr in our witness list. People were trying to figure out, why did we have this eclectic witness list of Neil Simon and Tom Brokaw and some of these other names on there? It was all about Ken Starr. But for Ken Starr being such an ass, contemptible human being, and a likely fraudster, Snipes doesn't end up in the position he ended up in. It was because he distrusted Starr that led to a bunch of things. And so we knew it from that, but I didn't know the details of his prior testimony. I wasn't prepared for us. So I had to do it right there on the fly. And it became clear in cross-examining him that I wasn't going to be able to trap him substantively. But it was also clear that the guy was a complete ass of a human being. So my whole cross-examination shifted from a substantive cross-examination to an emotive cross-examination, with the goal being to show the jury, do you like this human being? Can you tolerate this human being? Would you want this human being to be your advisor? Can you understand why Snipes hated him? This guy represents the government. He's sort of a substitute for the government, similar to the techniques that Mesereau used in the Michael Jackson defense case to say, do you really like this lady? Do you really trust this lady? Do you want to be on this lady's side? And it was very effective. That jury hated that guy by the end of it. But we also had planted enough stories and subpoenaed enough evidence that we triggered the New York prosecutors opening investigation into what Wes's allegations had been for decades, which was that Starr was systematically stealing from his clients and customers. They hid that evidence through the trial, but ultimately our subpoenas triggered the New York investigation that led to him, hiding in his closet with his new stripper wife when the cops came. And Snipes got a huge kick out of that.
I'm going to do the backfilling on the story for a lot of people. And let me just ask you a question. At the time, did you know what a celebrity he actually was himself, like who his client profile was?
Oh, yes. We knew everything about him. So I didn't know what he had testified to, and I didn't know what lies he would tell, but we knew everything else about him. I mean, we were able to get his son to flip, and his son, and that's what surprised the prosecutor that flipped the script that day.
Wow.
We were able to get a key advisor to.
So I'm going to go backfill. I'm going to go backfill on this. It's really interesting, but we're not going to get lost, and we got so much to talk about, right? So, about 10 years ago or something, 12 years ago, back then I used to read the New York Post. Isn't that crazy? So I think it was like page 2 or something that we know Ken Starr, right? We knew Ken Starr pretty well. He was part of the big dollar Democratic circle, right? And he had all the celebrity clients. He had Uma Thurman. We would go to a lot of parties. Uma Thurman would always be there, Al Pacino, Carly Simon, all the big celebrities. And he was their accountant, right? we knew his auditing shop really well. We would go there. He was even doing Warren Buffett's philanthropy. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one day I'm reading a post, right? I don't read it anymore. I haven't read that thing in a long time. But back then, I used to read it like an animal, right? Like it was like my scripture, right? So I'm reading it, and it said that Uma Thurman, it's like a big story, goes, I think the head was like, I used to keep it.
Kill Bill.
Yeah, something like Uma Thurman goes kill Bill. And she kicked in his door. So his office, right? You walk into his office, and then he had like a partition, and behind that was his conference room and all that type of stuff. She kicked in that door because he embezzled $1 million from her. And that's how I found out. And then I think I saw him at the Regency like 7 or 8 years later. And that was the whole story. I knew that everything was blowing up for him. And then I guess about 5 years ago, I think I'm looking through some old articles. Maybe I'm nostalgic. I don't even know how it happened. And your name was in it. And, I remember Wesley Snipes really well. Everybody in New York City, downtown, used to see Wesley Snipes, right? He was a fixture. And so it was kind of like you and I have there's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You and I have like a 1 degree, right? It's kind of amazing. It's kind of amazing.
Oh, I mean, this whole story, the people that were covering for him, what's amazing is Uma Thurman would have never had her money stolen from her. A lot of other people wouldn't have had their money stolen from them if the New York DA's office had not ignored Wesley Snipes in the 90s, because he went to them in the 90s saying, this guy is scamming me, this guy is scheming me, this guy's doing funny stuff with real estate. He figured it out before anybody else. But because of the political connections and juice that Starr had, and because Snipes was not taking that seriously because already he was facing collateral pressure from other places politically, they didn't pay attention to him. And then they conspired to cover up his corruption during the trial, which I had strong suspicions of. But we issued so many subpoenas that we got the right people's attention. We just couldn't expose it during the trial, but it did lead to his prosecution afterwards. I mean, this is a guy who dumped his wife on her when she had, was in bad medical condition. She was a John McCain, for people who don't know. I mean, John McCain did that to his wife, and married a stripper from one of those crazy New York strip. It's one of the famous ones that everybody knows. It's got some organized backers for owners.
Yeah.
But she ratted him out right away, and he was hiding behind the curtains in the closet. And Snipes got a huge kick out of that because, I mean, that guy had been his nemesis forever. That guy ended up serving a lot longer than Snipes ever did, and deservedly so. So it was just and righteous to see him undone. But he thought he was immune. We were the first people to really come after him heavy and trigger the right attention to him ultimately, that ultimately led to a good effect. But taking him apart emotionally in front of the jury was ultimately probably the key turning point. There are 2 or 3, but it was one of the 2 or 3 key turning points. If that doesn't happen, we don't win all the felony acquittals and misdemeanor acquittals. We should have won the whole case. 9 of the 12 jurors were for complete acquittal across the board. 3 held out because they lied to get onto the jury in the first place, and the judge let him get away with it. And that's why they cut a deal and convicted him of 3 misdemeanors, assuming he would do no time, as should happen. But the judge is biased against people of certain political beliefs. I called him Boss Hodges. It turned out the local community called him Boss Hodges.
Wow.
And he ended up doing about 2 years, but it was light time. It was, he did a game while he was inside. He taught yoga while he was inside. It was nothing like the movies that he'd been in, which and now he's going to be he's in Coming to America 2, which I think came out today.
No way. You and I could talk about it for such a long time, and there's so much to talk about. And that's one of the things, but it's unfair to everybody else, right? Other than to say that I learned 2 lessons, maybe even more, right? But 2 that I remember. And one of them is I bumped into him with his girlfriend at an awards thing, and his girlfriend was inappropriately dressed, right? And we know his wife, and we knew his wife was very sick. And I thought, what a detestable person this is, right? There's just something mentally off with this person.
Ken Starr he was scuzzbag times 10.
So I learned that lesson about, just presentation, even of your own girlfriends or whatever it is, that there's a certain kind of,
you don't bring the stripper to the high-end party.
And yeah, there's a certain type of etiquette that people have to be respectful, because that was really bad. And everybody knows his wife, so that even made it worse. And the lesson number 2, which is really important, is that he was commingling his funds, right? He paid for that $4 million apartment because he was commingling his funds. And so I learned another valuable lesson from that. I learned that be very wary of people that live beyond their means, and be wary of somebody who's kind of garish with their wealth. And he was an accountant. Accountants aren't, he was a celebrity accountant nonetheless, but they're not supposed to have that type of money, right? There's something wrong if an accountant has that type of money. He's stealing from somebody. So I learned that lesson. So I learned just, to also be wary of.
He was sophisticated at it too. He was, before the real estate scandals of the 2000s, he was doing that kind of transactions with his own client's property. He would use his client's property to secure loans to himself personally. It was Snipes who disclosed it and discovered it. And if the government hadn't been so corrupt in New York, he would have been caught a lot sooner. But there was no better story than what happened to Ken Starr. And it was all because he thought he could lie against Wesley Snipes for a criminal trial and that everybody would come to his protection. And he was wrong.